Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. There he is, Krishna. Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Welcome back, y'all. We're going to get right to it. There are some really interesting and significant verses today, just like every other verse in chapter 9. Very interesting and significant. But I think this will be a quick stream. I'm going to try and keep it quick for everyone's benefit. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. All right. We are doing chapter 9, verse 20 through 22. This cluster is a little bit different than how we see on H.D. Goswami's translation, which once again may be clustered on purpose or maybe not. And I don't think it's even, it's with Prabhupada's Gita, it's totally different. It's just, he's just writing it verse by verse, purport by purport, and he's letting Krishna arrange it however Krishna wants to arrange it. But yeah, it's different with this literal translation by H.D. Goswami, which is just only English, only literally translated, and there are certain paragraphs that are indented. So unless we ask him specifically, we can only speculate why the indent is there. Is it the same? Is it a mundane reason just because it organizes better, or because it's what I'm thinking it could be, that these verses are meant to be clustered in 3 or 4 at a time, roughly. 20 through 22. Here we go. Those with 3 sciences, soma drinkers, cleansed of sin, honoring me with offerings, petition passage to heaven. Approaching Surendra's world of merit, they enjoy in heaven the heavenly pleasures of gods. Having enjoyed the vast heavenly world and exhausted their merit, they, again, enter the mortal world. Thus, having duly pursued Triveda Dharma and their wished for wishes, they achieve only going and coming. Persons who worship me thinking of no other, ever diligent, to them I bring support and security. That's all. Now there's one footnote here, 3 sciences, denotes the Rig, Sama, and Yajurveda. Yes, which should be clear in Prabhupada's translation. Yeah, Trividya. That's the very first word of verse 20, which Prabhupada literally translates as the knowers of the 3 Vedas. And yeah, H.D. Goswami says knowers or pursuers, something of the 3 sciences. That's interesting. It's a very interesting translation. I do think if you want to just keep it purely in the English world, especially those coming from a secular, don't know anything about Hindu background, it's interesting. Translating Veda as science is probably the closest we can do. Obviously, we know Veda means knowledge, and everyone knows what knowledge means. But the idea that it's not just knowledge, some things that you know, but like a whole field of knowledge and study and practice, science is a good word for that. So I can't really disagree there. Here's verse 20, as translated by Prabhupada. Those who study the Vedas and drink the Soma juice, seeking the heavenly planets, worship me indirectly. They take birth on the planet of Indra, where they enjoy godly delights. So Prabhupada says Indra, H.D. Goswami says Surendra. And yep, sure enough, Surendra Lokam. That's what the Sanskrit is, the planet of Surendra. And then Prabhupada literally translates that as the world of Indra. So Surendra means of Indra. So Indra is Indra, and Surendra is conjugation of Indra, of Indra. I like Prabhupada's translation more here because, I mean, if you're reading H.D. Goswami's translation and you don't know anything about the Vedas or whatever, and you just see Surendra, it's like, who's that? What is that? And there's no footnote on that either. Once again, I'm not here to fault find H.D. Goswami or Srila Prabhupada, just bringing to light different lenses, different perceptions, different analysis on both and or more and or less than that. Sometimes I just like Krishna himself, just his words. But even that, I mean, just when I say just Krishna's words, it's coming from Prabhupada. That just means only the colloquial translation done by Prabhupada. And sometimes the Sanskrit itself. But still, I'm fully relying on Prabhupada to translate the Sanskrit. And if there are questions about that, I look at other Sanskrit translations, and even when I do that, I still end up following Prabhupada and seeing his translation as the most accurate and useful. But when some of these words have like 5 different meanings, so if you just see one translation of it and you're kind of not sure, and then you see a few other similar meanings, and you see how they're all similar but a little different, then you go back to the original translation and you get a clear picture of what it means in that context. So let's first talk about how this compared with the last verse cluster we talked about last week, where Krishna is just like, bam, I'm everything, man. I'm Om, I'm heat, I'm rain, I'm drought, being and non-being, I am everything. And that verse cluster kind of, to me, is like a real show of magnanimity, but also elicitation of devotion and honor. Like, bring it on, baby. Like, I'm number one, give it up, And now he's kind of going back to talking about those other people who don't quite get that. And they're still doing great things, studying the 3 Vedas, drinking Soma. They're going to heaven, enjoying in heaven, hundreds of thousands of times better than we do on this planet. That's exactly what Prabhupada says in the final sentence. Hundreds of thousands of times better than on this planet. It's a direct quote. Yeah, so there are people who don't quite get it, that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, but they study the 3 Vedas, they do dharma quite well, and they I just noticed my japa was 3 rounds short from yesterday, but I remembered I actually did 4 rounds, so I did 1 extra round yesterday. Okay, start that over. All right. And I forgot what I was saying. But japa is more important anyway, right? So no problem. Yeah, so people do the mundane dharmas and they do it well. Great, you get heaven, godly delights, but you don't get Krishna. And compared to Krishna, that ain't nothing, as we're going to learn in the very next verse. And another Sanskrit thing that's interesting here, godly delights comes from the word deva bhogan, which means pleasure of the gods. Bhoga Bhoga of the Devas. And we know, you should know, if you're listening to this, most of you, I doubt at any point I'm going to get like a lot of Christians or Muslims or something listening to me here. But so you probably know if you're listening to this. You're welcome, by the way. I said that at the beginning. I think it's on the about me of this channel, this YouTube channel. Like anyone's welcome. If you're a theist, you're all welcome. If you're an atheist, you're not welcome. Go away. It's that simple. But I do understand most people coming here will be from ISKCON or some very similar Hindu Vaishnav sect. So Bhoga is what Bhoga is pre-prasadam. So Bhoga is an enjoyable thing, typically food, but it's also flowers and other things that are, about enjoyment. That the Bhoga is what the Bhutanis, not sure about that word exactly, but the created Jiva Bhuktam, the creatures of this world, they're made out of this enjoyment thing, and they want more enjoyment thing, and that's Bhoga. Bhoga is the stuff we enjoy and our material nature enjoys and desires. And most people, especially in Kali Yuga, are doing that here on this world. They're enjoying their things, and then they go, if they're really good at their dharma, they can go to heaven and have amazing bhoga. But if it's not prasadam, it's not the real deal. So prasadam means you take the bhoga and you offer it back to the Supreme, hopefully the Supreme Lord, but at least the demigod or ancestors or something. And then you take the remnants of that offering, and that's prasadam. And prasadam is very interesting because when you're fortunate and you do it right, it really is one of the highest pleasures you can enjoy. It's better than bhoga, basically. Even the best bhoga is still bhoga. It's a different tattva than prasadam. And that's what Krishna is talking about here. Even those on the heavenly planets enjoying beyond our comprehension, they're not getting prasadam. They're not at the deepest level. They're not any different than people doing bhoga here. It's just their material, temporary senses are, really fired up about it. But in terms of eternity, it's nothing. On to 21. When they have thus enjoyed heavenly sense pleasure, they return to this mortal planet again. Thus, through the Vedic principles, they achieve only flickering happiness. I really like that term, flickering happiness. I don't remember anything like that in H.D. Goswami's translation, and it's not in the Sanskrit. So that's perhaps some poetic license from Prabhupada, although not really. I mean, it's poetic could be, if you're in English listening to me, you could take that in offense and think it means something's not real or accurate or something. I don't mean it in that way. Krishna is very poetic. That's one reason why the Bhagavad Gita is by far my favorite text, because it's so poetic. It has this philosophical and scientific potency, which is unmatched. And it also has this artistic poeticism, which is unmatched. It has both at the same time, which is stupefying. I don't know anything else like this. And Prabhupada, boosts it up even higher. So it's just like literally stupefying. So the Sanskrit is gata agatam, death and birth. So just by looking at those words, it's like Bheda abheda, which is difference and non-difference. Gata agatam, it either means death and non-death or birth and non-birth. I don't know which, but you can tell just by looking at the words. You have this word gata and then agata. So a is a prefix which just negates the word. So it's either death and non-death or birth and non-birth, most literally. But yeah, even in the literal translation, Prabhupada doesn't go that literally. He just says death and birth because that's good enough. It's just as literal, but it's it's a bit more understandable in English. It's fine. So that's 21. Oh, wait a sec. Wished for wishes, going and coming. So I can't find any word like death or birth in H.D. Goswami's translation. Exhausted is the same. Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. All three translations are different. The Prabhupada's literal translation and his English translation and H.D. Goswami's literal translation, all three are different. So in this case, I'm just going to go with Prabhupada's colloquial translation, which is so easy to understand and so obviously accurate to the gist, at least to the gist of what Krishna is saying here. But the last line is really key. Gata gatam, death and birth, or going and coming, something like that. Yeah, going. It must be going and coming, going and not going, something like that. Kama kamaha, kama 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 chameleon. Kama means desire, as in Kama Sutra, the Sutra of Desire, and that's desiring sense enjoyment. So kama kama, I believe, would mean desire and the things that are desired. So it's not just saying desire, desire. It's not just repeating his words to be like, emphasis. I'm pretty sure in Sanskrit when you say it twice like that, and it may even be written phonetic, in the Sanskrit phonetic alphabet, there may be a little change to it. Like for instance, in the literal translation, it's kama kamaha, and then in the transliteration, it's kama kama. So there's three long vowels, but it loses the H. So it seems like a little bit different thing is happening, and there's a dash in between them, a hyphen. So it seems like it's not just saying the word twice. It's a compound term. That last line literally means we attain, according to Prabhupada, it literally means we attain, they attain death and birth and desiring sense enjoyments. Or desiring sense enjoyments, they attain death and birth. They go and they come and they go and they come. So, and this is what I was alluding to earlier, that even though you can enjoy in heaven unbelievable experiences, so amazing, it's flickering happiness. You still return again to this mortal planet. And even though it may feel like lifetimes and uncountable years, it's just flickering happiness, and within the purvey of eternity, it's just a little flicker. It's not actually a big deal for the soul, and for God, it's just, oh, he's just, playing over there. Maybe he's done playing and he'll come back to me. Oh, and then in the purport, the final sentence is, one should better take to the spiritual world to enjoy eternal life full of bliss and knowledge and never return to this miserable material existence. So I'm once again bringing to your attention one thing Prabhupada does a lot, and following Prabhupada means we should actually do the same thing, not imitating, but the same style of writing and speech, for the same reasons we should definitely do. What is Prabhupada referring to there? Is he just being poetic? Is Krishna just being poetic? No, there's a much deeper meaning here, which is hinted at, and they're inviting us to use our intelligence to find the hidden mysteries that will, in fact, actually benefit us the most. It's not just like some game or something, some riddle, where you get plus 10 points if you figure it out. You don't get plus points, you get plus a lot better, more significant things than that. Sat Chit Ananda. It's Sanskrit. Prabhupada is literally speaking Sanskrit in English. He's not translating Sanskrit into English, and I'm not even sure if he's referring to Sanskrit. I think he's literally just speaking Sanskrit in English when he says eternal life full of bliss and knowledge. It's the exact same thing. Eternal, sat, bliss, ananda, knowledge, chit. So they're in a different order, but it's the exact same words. This is, once again, in terms of following Prabhupada, this is exactly what I do. When I speak to devotees, I do the same thing. They never catch it. A lot of times they don't catch it. And when I speak to everyone else, every non-devotee or even devotees in the secular context, and especially to all my students and coworkers here in Korea, I'm actually speaking Chinese and English most of the time. And it's only reluctantly so. I'd rather just speak only Chinese because for me, it's the cleanest, most efficient and accurate language that's based in reality. And I actually like reality. Even when I suffer through reality, I actually prefer to be here in reality. And even when I have some fantasies or I do some escapist things, playing video games, whatever, I prefer to do that realistically, if that makes sense. And yeah, we're going to find out in the next verse, Prabhupada does the same thing in his purport. He does a direct, not direct, it's an indirect reference to significant Sanskrit terms in English. And that's just really cool and awesome because it's not a direct reference at all. He doesn't say in the Upanishad, chapter 1, whatever. No, it's beautiful. He's claiming to be, it's so funny. He's claiming that, this is the purport. This is what it looks like to a beginner, right? Like, oh, this is my purport. This is my commentary and so on. But actually, no, it's literally just more Shastra. It's just, it's just more Shastra from Krishna, but from other books and different things. It's better to see of it as that than, quote, purport or commentary. I'm not saying it's not commentary, but we're talking about commentary from a pure devotee of the Supreme Lord, who is not just a pure devotee either. Like Jesus Christ was, I believe, a pure devotee of the Lord, and he was well versed in the scriptures, but he would speak in parable on purpose and for good reason, based on that time and context. And Prabhupada and his Prabhupada have a different tradition, this Vedanta tradition, which is very honest, very scholarly, and technical. So if you want to respect them and follow them, you should, like, you have to do that in the same way. Which for me is natural, and I don't want to say easy, but it's just natural. It matches my nature well. So I have trouble when I deal with Christians and Jews and Muslims from the Abrahamic world, which is so much of it is parable and figurative and non-technical and like, whoa, woo-woo, basically. I don't mean woo like it's fake, but I mean it's like very right-brained. You could say it's super logical, but it's definitely not logical. Like in the same way that Aristotle is logical, it's not logical like that. But actually, Vedanta is really logical. It is actually technical and scientific and explicit, and and it should be studied and practiced accordingly as a science. And what does science mean? Science you can do artistically. There's no rule that you have to be really boring and put on a lab coat and follow rules just for the sake of following rules, and then you're a scientist. No, the best scientists are also artists. We should try to understand that. 22. But those who worship me with devotion, meditating on my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and preserve what they have. That last line is a good finisher for this verse and cluster, and in Sanskrit too. Krishna is literally saying, I carry their requirements. And in this case, but the colloquial translation is better because it rhymes, kind of, it flows nicely, and it's essentially the meaning is identical. But it's actually more clear. This in general, the Sanskrit is way more condensed than the English, regardless of who's translating it. Sanskrit is just by its nature more advanced intellectually, which means more condensed. There's more meaning into a smaller space of words. Short verse, short purport, but this one has the most significance. So how does this compare to the other verses we talked about so far? We're talking about people who don't quite get to Krishna, and instead they go to heaven and they come back down to earth. So they're lacking something, and they're not able to preserve that one good thing that they actually have. And that's what Krishna is alluding to here, right? Well, actually, there's something those people lack, but I'm going to carry it for you. If you let me, I'll carry it for you. And there's something that these people in heaven who come back to the mortal world again with only flickering happiness, there is something good that they have, but they're not able to preserve it. And Krishna says, well, if you come to me, I will preserve it for you. And what is that thing? I would describe it as proper devotion to the personal supreme. Proper in this case meaning sincere, realized, humble, and so on. Or Krishna Bhakti, basically. Whatever real, genuine bhakti that you've, attained through however many lifetimes you have, Krishna will preserve that and will carry it for you along with your journey throughout everything, because your conscious mind will forget it, and you'll I have experience of that and you'll go death and birth many times and you'll forget everything many times, but that most important thing you will have with you forever, and Krishna will personally attend to you being able to keep that forever and ever. Thank God. So we can be so forgetful, and even after touching the supreme and receiving mercy and grace from the most supreme, could still fall back down and do sinful, stupid things, even to the point of death and a new, different life somewhere else instead of going back home to Godhead. But if we need a few more lifetimes to do it, that's what we need. But whatever it takes, Krishna says you're not going to go backwards. Whatever progress you make on this most noble, most narrow path, you get to keep with you forever. Hard to believe for me, but I do accept that as true somewhat comfortably. But my conscious mind is just blown away by some of these things. And so, what does Prabhupada say in the purport that is, once again, it's not even a Sanskrit translation, and it's not even it's best to call it, like, I guess, an indirect reference to Shastra, to another Shastra. So I'll just read the purport, see if you catch it. One who is unable to live for a moment without Krishna consciousness cannot but think of Krishna 24 hours, being engaged in devotional service by hearing, chanting, remembering, offering prayers, worshiping, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, rendering other services, cultivating friendship, and fully surrendering to the Lord. Such activities are all auspicious and full of spiritual potencies. Did you catch it? Well, I'll tell you. Those, and you can count one by one. It's exactly 9 processes of devotional service from Sri Prahlad Maharaj in the Bhagavatam. That's the 7th canto. That's exactly what Prabhupada is referring to in the purport here. Anyway, who are these devotees? What do they actually want? Their only desire is to achieve the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What is that? That is called yoga. Oh, interesting. This is new. Kshema refers to the merciful protection of the Lord. Yoga kshemam. So that's in the last line. Yoga kshemam, Prabhupada translated as requirements. But let's break it down even further, which is kind of what Prabhupada is doing here. What does that mean? It means if you're doing yoga, there are, requirements for you to stay in yoga, but it's not all on you. Krishna is going to mercifully protect you throughout your yoga. So it's not just requirements. It's more that Krishna is really carrying you through the process and path of yoga. And Krishna protects his yogis from falling down to a miserable, conditioned life. So that's it. That's it for all my notes. Nice, 35 minutes. That's about exactly what I wanted to do today. See you next week. Hare Krishna.